Welcome to the Mike Knox Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Knox. If I had a sponsor, it would definitely be the Tavala oven. I don't know if you have one of these, but it's I guess it's a steam oven, and you buy the oven. It costs you about $100, and then you get a subscription for the food, and the food comes in these little tin containers. It's usually a chicken, a salmon. Sometimes they have a delicious bass. And you put it in there for about 15 to 20 minutes, and it comes out perfectly cooked. I've actually tried this with other foods that aren't delivered to you. It's delivered every Thursday, and the food's really good. It's I think you get about six meals for $80, and so for me, it's the convenience. It's worth it. I would definitely do it again, and I think I brought that up with the where the Tavala, you actually take the recipe and you put it underneath the scanner, and it scans the time, and the Tavala, which I named it Tina. Tina was acting a little iffy. And so it would take like 20 or 30 times. So then I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go get another oven because they're not that much. So I got another one, and I placed it across the room from Tina. And then Tina snapped out of it, whatever she was trying to do, and working like a charm now. So now I got this other Tavala oven that I've never even used because I'm waiting for Tina, to, again, turn her back on me. I put a pool in a couple years ago. I think it's been 4 years now, and I wanted to discuss this because the idea of putting a pool in seems like a great idea. It's kind of like remodeling. I think there's a show where the guy puts in these awesome pools, and those awesome pools are great, but the problem with those awesome pools is that they cost a lot of money because the awesomeness is what costs extra. So what I did is I just wanted a very simple pool, 12 by 24. It's very hot near my house, and so I called up 7 or 8 different, I wanted to get a good estimate, 7 or 8 pool companies, and I got one guy that came over and one guy that called me back. So the guy that came over, he gave a good pitch, and I was like, well, that's cool, and so he quoted me like $50,000, and then, he quoted me $40,000, and then, he's like, I'll write up the estimate. And then when he sent the estimate over, it was $10,000 over. And that's when I realized that these guys do not care anything about you. And the reason for that is that they know that you're going to get pool fever and you're going to do whatever you can to pay for that pool. And most people are just going to, borrow from the bank, and the bank's more than willing to give you more money. They could care less. So I had a budget. I wanted to stick to my budget. You really, in reality, you could make your own pool for far less. I would say you could do your own pool if you contracted out everybody. You could probably do it for under $10,000, because that's the whole thing is that the pool guy comes in. He's like, these are all my guys, and we'll get this all done. And that's not true at all. He subcontracts all of those other people out. So you're like subcontracting out the excavation, the rebar guys, the cement guys. So all these people show up, and so it's kind of a very long process. They could really also make an entire pool in 2 weeks. They just choose not to. Most likely it's because they're doing other jobs, and then they're bidding. It's a big, the whole pool services is about sales. So that guy's just trying to get a bigger bid. And if he's got a couple bids for that year, well, he doesn't have to work anymore. So he doesn't care. He's not in a hurry to try to make you happy. So they will never call you back, and then you'll read reviews, and then there'll be somebody that's like some snarky person that's like, big deal that he didn't call you back. Well, it is a big deal because you're paying all this money for this guy that promised to do all this stuff. So you sign your contract, and then you don't hear anything for a couple months because he's off selling more pools, and so then you start to panic, and you're calling and you're calling and you're calling and you're not hearing anything. And then I was realizing, well, I didn't give him any money, so this is weird. So the reason I talk about this story is that there was so much weirdness with the process of it that and I was like going online Googling, and I didn't find anybody else. So it is heavily regulated. Somebody on there is making it sound like it's this easy thing. So anyway, so I had the guy come out in, I want to say in May, in the first week of May. And so he was like, we'll get this all done in a month. Well, May, June, July, August, September, October. He didn't finish until late October. So by then it was too cold to even use the pool. So I want to say it was 2 months. And then one morning, some guys showed up at 7 o'clock and just ripped through the backyard. Didn't even, knock on the door and say, hey, we're going to start or anything. So woke me up, and my wife is like, who is that? And I'm like, well, I'm hoping it's the pool people. And so the reason that they're subcontracted out, and so they just start excavating, and they start digging, and so they're ripping up your whole sprinkler system. And my backyard was small, so it was like no big deal for me, but for other people to be aware that they consider anything that's underground to not be their problem. So you're going to hear that over and over again, like, oh, it's not my problem. So one of the things was that they dug up another pool underneath the pool. So you're responsible, like if they hit a pipe or something like that, or, maybe there's a graveyard underneath there, you have no idea, because it's not like they're doing like ground penetrating radar. So you have no idea what's actually underneath your backyard until they come to excavate, which is just basically they come with a bulldozer and start to dig this hole. So for my 12 by 24, it was 6 feet deep. Well, they couldn't get down that far because they hit heavy bedrock, which is good because it means your foundation is good. But they don't test the ground or anything like that to find out if it's good or not. It's just a total guess, and you're also on the hook because that's your first $10,000. And if they have to, and it's one day, which is really only about 4 hours. And so if they have to come back the next day, it's another $10,000 because again, he's subcontracted that out. So they pull up this other pool, which was like a above ground, but they'd sunk it in and then like piped it through to heat it. And so the guy's like, what is this? And I'm like, I don't know. I just moved into this house. I have no idea. They didn't say anything about another. So they pulling up all this like tarps and pipes and stuff like that. So basically they're only supposed to be, excavating the dirt. So I had to pay, extra for that other pool that was underneath because that's considered trash. So then again, those guys leave. You don't hear anything for probably a month. Then some guys show up again. They rebar the entire place. It takes about 4 hours. It's a whole nother team. So you don't know. If you're trying to call that guy that sold it to you, and he's not answering. There's new guys there. They're a little shady. They don't exactly want to talk to you. So my best advice is, you gotta pull out a cooler with some drinks in it and some chips and stuff like that, and get to know your crew, because the guy who's in charge isn't going to be there. You also got to get your permits and stuff like that, and that's what he's supposed to do. Which is, you could do that yourself. You can just go to the permit office and pull the permits, but they make it sound like it's this huge ordeal. And then twice the guy didn't even show up when you're supposed to meet with the inspector, because they got to inspect your backyard and stuff like that. There's certain rules they have to have, like you have to have a fence, you have to have a certain door that goes out in a certain way. You have to have a sign up. So all these things are laws that are put in place for like a kid's going to wander into your backyard and drown. So at least they don't have a law in my area that you have to have a fence up, but they have all these other laws that you're responsible for and you have to follow. So you get the rebar in there. Then it's about another month until somebody shows up and they do the cement, which is great, but we'll call him Jimmy. Jimmy told you everything's nodded his head and wrinkled his eyebrows and said he was writing all this stuff down. Well, he didn't, and so you've got to be on top of it to see if they actually did the design right. So for me, they missed a step. So they cemented the entire thing and then had to come back to cement another step that was in the deep end. So the other thing with now you've cemented it, and this is, since I couldn't get a hold of Jimmy, I'm like Googling stuff, and my wife calls me and she's like, well, you're supposed to actually water it down for 2 weeks, because that way the cement's going to settle and it won't crack, and its future damage isn't going to happen. Of course, Jimmy didn't tell us that. So I'm out there watering the thing 2 or 3 times a day or whatever. So then another month goes by, and they're going to gunite it, which is the top layer or whatever. So they come out and do that. I can't remember if that's it or it's the stone that they do. But they started laying down the stone, and it was the wrong stone because Jimmy didn't pay attention, and it was this other hideous rock. So they had to pull that back up, and Jimmy was pissed off that they had to pull it back up, and Jimmy didn't care that he wasn't doing the right, the job or anything like that. So then after they do the stone around the pool, and then they put the gunite in there, and then you got to let it, then they fill it up with water, and then you can't go in it for like 2 weeks. And so, of course, by then, I just bought a wetsuit and jumped in it because I wanted to see how the pool was finally. So other than that, then you get like a 3-year warranty. I do suggest, I didn't get a heater at first because it was $5,000 and it wasn't in my budget. And I got that later on. What I didn't know is you actually have to get the gas company to come out, and they need to put on some new pipes. And so that's another kind of bigger ordeal. So it's better, I would say, to get that just to get everything done in the first place, because I want to go back later and put a jacuzzi in. But so far, I've really had little, no problems at all. So, Jimmy did okay. He's just horrible at communicating, I would say. And I do know that there was somebody else in my office that wanted a referral, and I said, do not hire Jimmy, and Jimmy was the only one that showed up, so they hired him, and the exact same horror story happened to their place with Jimmy. And that's what it is, just a racket. It's the racket with like the pool, whatever pool guy that you hire. It's the pool guy just raised the rate to 110. They were charging like 75 before, and because the economy is doing so great. But if you don't watch the pool guy's just going to walk into your backyard and walk right back out. They're going to try to cut corners like everybody else in this world. And if they see that somebody's home, then they're going to do some leaves and stuff like that. But like the pool guy that I had, he wasn't putting enough chlorine in there. It's something you got to stay up on top. I had to go get the pellets for it at Lowe's and add those to it. Otherwise your pool's going to turn green. So it's just maintenance. That's what, like buying a house, it's just maintenance. And now you have all these people that are trying to, alleviate some of that pain that you have, but they're trying to get paid too. They're trying to make a living. So it's kind of that, it's that fine line where you are you going to call them out on this, or are you going to let it slide? And most of the time, I suggest you let it slide, unless they're totally breaking something. Other than that, it's human beings, and we're all just lazy. That's what I chalk it up to. So that's my pool story. If I think of anything else, I will definitely let you know. Also, I won't bring that part up. So, LA haunts, I would definitely check out Mount Lowe. So, Mount Lowe is, the best way to describe that is, I'd say it's a hiking trail. So, if you were in Pasadena and you went all the way up Lake Street to the very top, there's actually an estate there that burned down, but that's estate, the foundation is still there, and then you take about I'd say it's probably about a 2 mile up to the top of Mount Lowe, which was there was a hotel. There was a series of hotels, but they all kind of burned down. But the idea back then was that the red car trolley was going to take you up to the top, and then it's this great view. So, imagine 100 years ago where the big thing for wealthy people was to have their home to have a view, and that was Thaddeus Lowe's big idea was, I'm going to have a hotel up here. People are going to take the trolley up to the top. You guys can, I don't know, go hunting. You can have a sarsaparilla, whatever it is that you want to do up here. But it just fires kept burning all these structures down. But at one time, it was a vacation resort, and the foundation parts are still up there, and you can still see some, some mechanics and stuff like that. There's another hiking spot that's called Chantry Flats, which that would be up Santa Anita, I do believe, the north part of Arcadia. And what's cool about Chantry Flats is maybe like a mile hike. It's real easy, and then there's a pretty good waterfall at the end. So if those are two pretty easy hikes. You wouldn't know it, but Los Angeles has a lot of great hiking areas, and that's something else that I intend to cover during this podcast. By the way, this is podcast number 10. We finally made it to the old 10. A place to eat in Los Angeles is Baroni. Some people call it Barone's, but it is a red vinyl Italian spot. It's also the restaurant in Fast Times at Ridgemont High where he forgets his wallet. It is at 13726 Oxnard Street, Valley Glen, or Van Nuys. But it basically looks like you're in a time capsule of the 1940s. One of my favorite restaurants in the Valley. But there used to be two of them. I used to go with my grandfather. There's another one on Ventura. So this one's kind of that time capsule of the Valley. That's why I love to go there. And you can't beat the food there. I go there all the time. My uncle loves it. My cousin loves it. The whole family digs it. TV show I've been watching lately, which was on for many seasons, is Family Ties. And I would just like to say that the actor, Michael Gross, I did a movie with him. And I produced a movie. He was the actor. He's just the nicest guy in the world, and I have to throw that one out there. Just salt of the earth guy, and you never think that you're going to meet an actor in Hollywood that's as nice as him, and he is. And you, my friend, are the best. A fun fact for this week that I've been wanting to talk about is there is actually a species of frog in Alaska that freezes during the winter, and while frozen, the frog stops breathing, its heart stops beating, its blood stops flowing, and it cannot move. However, when spring rolls around, the frog's body thaws and the frog returns to normal. That's crazy. I do remember, when I was younger, I think a moth flew into the freezer when I was getting a pudding pop, and it stayed in there for a week, and then I let it out to throw it away, and I was a kid, so don't judge me. And then it flew away. It had been frozen in the freezer for a couple days, I want to say, week, and it totally came back alive. And so I've always questioned our existence ever since that happened to me when I was younger, and I've never been able to recreate it. I do know that scientists like to, I've heard, freeze cockroaches and bring them back to life. I'm not too sure if that's real or not. Another study is that 54% of dog owners in the United States are willing to end their relationship if their dog does not like their partner. Absolutely believe this. I knew a girl one time. Normally dogs don't bark at me, but her dog, it was like a mixed dog, so that she got from the pound. So I'm sure that the dog was mentally ill, but it barked at me, and then she looked at me and she's like, "He never does that to anybody." And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I didn't do anything to the dog, so I don't know why it barked at me. And she was looking at me like the dog sensed evil or something. And that's just one of those stories for college where everybody's just been drinking and they want to blame everything on the evil that the dogs can see. Boeing is going to donate $1 million to a wildlife crossing over the 101. Now, if you haven't heard this, I think it's they named this mountain lion P1 or P2 or 42 or something, but it's found its way into Griffith Park. And Griffith Park is basically rivals. We just don't have a lake, but in Los Angeles it rivals Central Park in New York. And obviously there's a lot of wildlife because there's a lot of areas, where people dump bodies and then LA Homicide has to go and find them. But there's a lot going on at that Griffith Park, and it's the way that it's structured. It kind of wraps around the 5 freeway. So there's a lot of hidden spots there. But if you were to actually hang out there enough, you'll see there's big deer there and like huge bucks. Like I don't hunt, but I could see somebody coming over there with a bow, and because they're so nobody's hunting there, so they're these huge. I don't know what it's called, a 10-point buck or something, but they've got some antlers on their heads. Just let me say that. And then of course that's why this mountain lion is there, because that's basically like his grocery store. That's his Albertsons, his Ralph's. And so obviously he's going to follow the food wherever the food is at. Which brings me to, I walked out of my house the other day and there was a bobcat out in front. And he was hanging out in an area where usually there's like a rabbit's, whatever a rabbit home is. I don't know. Or is it a nest or something? I don't know. But obviously I don't see the rabbits anymore. So he or she ate them. But the bobcat hung out like all day long. So I was thinking for that day, is that bobcat hunting me? Because it's not going to take very long for that bobcat to run. It was only maybe like 20 yards to the front door, and I was getting in the car, and that thing could have killed me at any moment. But I think that the rabbits sacrificed themselves for me, and so I would like to thank the rabbits. There's a lot of talk this week how Facebook lost 237 billion. I don't quite buy that. Whether it was, he's got plenty of money, and I just like I would just like to know the truth. Does he have a toupee? Is it a weave? What is it? You've got billions of dollars, and you've got a horrible haircut, and that is what I want to know. Because when I Google that is there actually somebody that's taking that out? Like, no, out of the billions of people on this earth, nobody's ever Googled that, because there's no result to it on Google, and that's where I think we're really being censored. Is type in, does Mark have a toupee, and nothing comes up. So all I'm trying to do is ask the tough questions. That's all that I'm trying to do. In New York, a high school teacher was fired after making anti-police tweets. I get the whole we don't like the police, because I've been pulled over many times and the police haven't been nice to me. But I think that we need to, especially with the teachers, we need to acknowledge, yes, there are some police officers that are very angry. The training makes them angry. But also there's some nice police officers because they have families and they're human beings and stuff like that. I believe it's the training that we need to go, not me personally, but that the at the academy that they need to retrain. And the reason for that is that the training is very one-sided, and me being pulled over, I'm supposed to comply and do whatever this person says. So like I'm on my way home and I've just lost my job and my wife's about, going to leave me and I'm losing my house and I just want to get home and end it all, but I can't, because this guy with the badge and the gun pulls me over for going 5 miles over the speed limit. And he's angry too, because he's just lost his home and his wife just left him and he just wants to get home too and end it all. But first he's going to be a big a-hole to me. And that's the problem, is that it's a very one-sided conversation when you have an interaction with a police officer. And if you ask questions or, hey, why did you stop me, sir? They go berserk on you. So that's where some training should come in. That's just my personal opinion. But maybe a little, communications. I took that class in college. It did me well. A little speech, getting up there and saying some speech in front of people and not freaking out. And I think that's what people have been asking for the police, but we're kind of asking the wrong questions of the police. Like, just get rid of all of them isn't going to help, because we really do need them, because it is a thankless job and they are out there, especially now. Meeting, it's like the crazy people are now taken over and they're the ones that are making all the rules, and the police are trying to do their best to help us. So I do appreciate everybody out there. And please don't give me a ticket. I went to a couple places. I'm fascinated with the mob. And Los Angeles has a very rich history of the mob. You wouldn't know it, but there was actually back in the day when you had Mickey Cohen, you also had Jack Dragna, and so then when you had Bugsy Siegel come out here, Bugsy Siegel started to make his own rackets and kind of, became more popular than Dragna, because Dragna was somebody that wanted to kind of be old school, quiet. He didn't want to, make a scene and see. So people have kind of forgotten about Dragna, but it was also him and his brother, and they had a crew, and that crew were the ones that bombed Mickey Cohen's house that was in Brentwood, and that was at 513 Moreno Avenue. And that gangster who did that was Jimmy the Weasel, and he has a book, which is a great book that a lot of people don't know about, which is called The Last Mafioso, which is by Orvid Demands, and it basically breaks down, Jimmy the Weasel coming out to L.A., and he's basically a hitman, and L.A. at the time, they're running like the garment district, and they're kind of running the docks like San Pedro, but they got their hands in entertainment like the movies, and that's why you had Steven Seagal got into a little bit with some gangsters when they wanted to, take a piece of some movie. But the mob wasn't as strong as they were in, say, New York, Chicago. So, L.A. kind of was, there was gambling, there was prostitution. We also had gambling boats. So they would be 3 miles off of Santa Monica. People would go take a boat from Santa Monica out into the bay, and I think 2 of the ships are actually sunk in Santa Monica Bay. But the politicians didn't like, or law enforcement didn't like the gambling ships, so they sunk them. But that was very lucrative at the time. So you got to think about, basically bootleggers, and you've got Mickey Cohen, Jack Dragna, and Dragna's home was at, it's still there. I think he actually built it. It's at 3927 Hubert Avenue in Los Angeles. And Dragna, I think, died on Sunset. Maybe it was at, I think, the Sunset Hotel, but I think he was seeing a lady there when he had a heart attack. What a great way to go, though. And I don't think he was very old. Yeah, that's another grave that I want to go to. And Mickey Cohen is at Holy Cross. I've already filmed his grave. But that brings me to one of the government operations that went on in New York, which was Operation Donnie Brasco. And there's the the movie Donnie Brasco, which I think is a great movie with Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp plays Agent Joe Pistone. So from 1976 until 81, he was undercover for 6 years, and he took down the Bonanno crime family. So what that did is that actually made like a power vacuum within the 5 families, and so the feds really forgot about the Bonanno family because they thought, well, they just went under, and that actually made them flourish even more because nobody was watching over them. And there's a couple other books that are actually what happened after that, and what led to their downfall again, which I think it happened about 10 years ago. But what I also liked about the book, The Last Mafioso, was that Jimmy the Weasel basically breaks down where there's so many different gangs in LA now that they kind of, like the Italian families got, that was so small that they really didn't have the power like they do in New York. And so it was really like at the time where he, was acting boss for like a year, he didn't really want to do it because there was, a handful of other mobsters that were in Los Angeles. And you would just never think that there was mobsters in Los Angeles. I'm sure that they are still around. But you would just never know it in Los Angeles. You mostly think of, Chicago, New York. So that is my my toe in the waters of the mob of Los Angeles. Gangster Squad is the movie that I was thinking of. And what I like about Gangster Squad is that it was written by Will Beall, I think is his name, and he was an LAPD officer for 17 years, I do believe, and now he's out there writing and directing, and doing a great job, which is pretty cool that you can transition from police officer to writer-director. Today, and that grave is going to be actor Alan Hale Jr. He, of course, had a father who was Alan Hale, a very successful actor, so he took over the name Alan Hale Jr., but he was born Alan Hale McCahan, March 8th, 1921, and he's probably best remembered as the skipper on Gilligan's Island. He had a television career that spanned 4 decades, but I never really thought about the skipper, but his name was Captain Jonas Grumby. Had no idea about that, but he appeared in more than 200 films and television roles from 1941. He was born in Los Angeles, and his father, of course, was Alan Hale Sr., but his real name was Rufus McCahan, who used the stage name Alan Hale, and his mother was also a silent film actress, Gretchen Hartman. They are actually buried next to each other at Forest Lawn in Glendale. I've been to both of their graves. His father appeared in more than 235 films and had a successful screen career, both as a leading man and silent film era. He can be seen in films with Errol Flynn. So he was a leading man back in the day, his father was. Alan Hale Jr. was served in the Coast Guard during World War II, and he dropped the junior after his father passed away in 1950. He of course, on Gilligan's Island as the skipper, the series aired for a total of 98 episodes from 1964 to 1967, and I was watching that. I think it was on all the time when I was a kid, just rerun after rerun after rerun. His character proved to be the most prominent role of his career, and he continued to do the reruns and the popularity of the show. And I think he probably got typecast as that, but embraced himself as the skipper. And according to Sherwood Schwartz, he often visited children in hospitals dressed up as the skipper. I know that also Gilligan dressed up also. That's pretty cool, man. I think if you're ever a movie star, you should definitely dress up and go see the kids at Children's Hospital. I've had my kid in Children's Hospital, and nobody came to visit us, so please go and do that if you are a celebrity. Hale reprised his role as the skipper in 3 television films: The Rescue from Gilligan's Island, The Castaways on Gilligan's Island, and The Harlem Globetrotters at Gilligan's Island. I gotta tell you, when the Harlem Globetrotters teamed up with Gilligan's Island, it was such a great show. And I think they did that in their cartoon too. Then there was The New Adventures of Gilligan's Island from 64 to 77, and Gilligan's Planet from 82 to 83. He appeared as a skipper in 2 unrelated sitcoms, The New Gidget and Alf. I also remember him as a taxi driver on Growing Pains, which was kind of random at the time, but his name on that as a taxi was Jay Grumby. He also promoted Gilligan's Island reruns on TBS along with Bob Denver. Denver and Hale also appeared as their characters on various promotional events. So I think that's pretty cool. As you're an actor, you gotta kind of get that. You're really winning the lottery when you get a successful show like that, and the fact that they embraced it, especially when you do get typecast, and they really seem to enjoy playing those roles. Alan Hale, in addition to acting, owned Alan Hale's Lobster Barrel, a restaurant he opened in the 70s. The Lobster Barrel was located on La Cienega Boulevard in Los Angeles on Restaurant Row. I guess there was a Restaurant Row on La Cienega at that time. I remember seeing an ad, though, for Lobster Barrel in Venice, and I want to say that it was on Washington, but maybe that never opened up. He phased his business out in 1982. I wish that I could have gone to the Lobster Barrel, and he opened up Alan Hale's Quality and Leisure Travel Office. I got to tell you, because of the internet, I do not think anybody goes into a travel office anymore. That is something of the past. He was married twice. He had 4 kids. He got cancer in 1990, passed away at the age of 68, and he was cremated, and his ashes were sprinkled into the Pacific Ocean, which I think is a great place for the skipper to be. Hopefully he did not get back to the island there. Like, subscribe, tell me who else you want me to see. Check me out on TikTok at Famous Graves.